Assalamu alaikum. Today I wanted to share with you a story of a young Pakistani boy who grew up with his mother, and he was born with a childhood disease that left him mentally challenged but physically normal. So he could run and play and do what most of us can do, but he had to go to state schools for his education, and he would have to, be under supervisory care during the day when his mom was at work, so that he could learn. And his story begins when his mom, who was leaving him at the Denton State School in Denton, Texas, as she went to work every day. He was under the care of a male nurse who was taking care of several handicapped children during the day. He would have an 8-hour shift. And one day when Miss Chishty came to pick up her son, Haseeb, he didn't come and greet her like he normally would. So she had to go to his room, where she found him in a pool of blood and paralyzed. And she asked the nurse what happened to her son. And the nurse said he didn't know, and said that Haseeb must have done this to himself. So the mother couldn't believe that response, and she said obviously he couldn't do it to himself. And she was frantic, and she called the doctors and got medical attention to her son. And eventually, she kept asking what happened to her son, and the employee and the Denton State School said, we can't find anything that happened. We don't know what happened to your son. And she was so upset with, obviously she left him in good shape that day at the school. And when she came back to pick him up, he was paralyzed from the waist down. So she ended up suing the school for the damages to her son. And before it could even get to trial, the state of Texas has a law called sovereign immunity, and the Denton State School was able to hide behind that law, saying we're immune from this type of lawsuit, and they were able to get it thrown out of court with summary judgment in their favor. And she was upset that she didn't even get her case heard. She appealed it, and when she appealed the case, it went, and the appellate court affirmed the district court's decision. So he said, yeah, the state of Texas is immune from this kind of court case and lawsuit. So I'm sorry, Ms. Chishty, but you're not allowed to bring this type of case against the school. And she was like, how do I get justice for my son? He's obviously, something happened to him. And she was so adamant as to how could this have happened to my son, and nobody's telling me anything, and nobody's sharing with me anything, and the courts won't help me. And so she started investigating the school on her own. She started calling people and asking if their kids had had any issues. And she started calling the media to do an investigation. She kept going and going, and she got Geraldo Rivera involved in it, and he did a documentary on her case. And eventually she brought so much attention to her son's case that the employee who was watching her son that day confessed to beating his son, Haseeb up. And when he confessed, he said, I kicked him maybe 10, 12 times. I was, angry at Muslims, and I took it out on Haseeb. And I was actually addicted to drugs, and I was taking my patient's drugs. And, he had since left the school. This was several years later, like 5 years, 6 years after the incident. He had started going to church and felt guilty about what he had done, and was now, I guess, a born-again Christian. And when all this was taking place and all the media hype was on it, he actually came back and confessed to doing what he did to Haseeb. And then the state prosecutors detained him, put him on trial, and he was convicted, and he was sentenced to go to jail for what he did to Haseeb. So now he's in jail. It is now an admitted crime by a state employee, and Mrs. Chishty wanted the state to pay for the damages to her son. But the state of Texas said that we can't do that. It's, it's sovereign immunity. We're not liable for your son. And she had done all of this work on her own. She had hired her own lawyers. She had done all of this advocacy all by herself with her family and her sons. And after she's exhausted and done all of this work by herself, she heard about the Muslim Legal Fund. And she brought it to our attention. She said, this is what I've already done. Can you guys help me? And we looked at everything that she's done and we said, wow, you've done everything you're supposed to do. You've done everything we would have done. And it looks like the case is not going to be listened to by the courts. But let's see if we can find, some more opinions. So we took it to everybody we knew, and we finally showed it to a state representative, Congressman Lon Burnham from the state of Texas. And he looked at it and he said, Khalil, I have an idea. He said, if you get permission from the state of Texas to sue the state of Texas, then you can move forward with this case. And I said, well, how do we do that? He said, well, I could write a bill, and if we get it sponsored by another congressman, we can have a vote on it. And if we could pass it in the House, then pass it in the Senate, and then get the governor to sign it, then you would have permission to sue the state of Texas. So that's exactly what we did. He wrote the bill, and he got a sponsor, and then tried to lobby the bill. And it was too late in the session, so actually had to wait for 2 years for them to get back in session again. But they came back the next year and put it at the top of the list and pushed it through the House. And it was a very sympathetic case. Everybody that heard it wanted to help. So it passed the House, then it went to the Senate, Texas State Senate, and it passed the Senate. And then it went to the governor's desk, and everybody helped us lobby the governor, and the governor signed it. And so for the first time in the history of Texas, Texas gave Ms. Chishty the right to sue the state of Texas for the damages to her son. And then we helped her find a lawyer who sued the state of Texas for the damages to her son. And the state of Texas settled this case and agreed to pay all the medical costs and damages to Haseeb for his lifetime. So now, alhamdulillah, she has gotten the peace of mind or the justice that she deserved. And this is just one case that I wanted to share with you tonight. And Ramadan, it's the inspiration of never give up. It's, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test us. We tie our camel and we trust in Allah. And I just, I have all the admiration and respect for Miss Chishty and how much work she put into it. And she did this on her own, and she tried her best. And when it didn't work, she came to us, and this was really outside of our expertise, but we decided to, talk to everybody we knew, and eventually found somebody who said, here's a way it can be done, and then helped us get it started. And then by the grace and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made it happen. So this is a success story for the entire community. Never give up, never give in, and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and good things can happen. So thanks for listening, and inshallah, Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem.